Thanks, Titan. Thank you. Shouldn't pee on my plants. You know that, right? Oh, come on, for real? Titan, you're a bad boy. Good morning, welcome back to Morgan Hill Farm. So it is a very exciting day. We are going to be planting out our tomatoes today. It is April 26th, and originally I was going to wait until the first week in May, but our temperatures at nighttime are gonna be above 50 from this point on, so I'm gonna go ahead and get all of my tomatoes out today. Nate and our oldest son, Vincent, are gonna work to get some cattle panels and T-posts in here. That's been the best solution for trellising for us. We've done the Florida weave before, but the plants get so heavy and so unruly that they just end up flopping over with that. So the cattle panels have really helped to keep everything nice and neat, and it's easy to harvest, also very easy to prune. So that is what we're up to today. So the way that we're going to prep this row to install our cattle panel trellises is by measuring out where we need to put the T-posts. Each cattle panel is 16 feet long, so we're measuring out a 16-foot distance, and then we're marking at 1 foot, 8 feet, and 15 feet to put the T-posts at. That's going to give a nice amount of support, and if the cattle panels are bowing at all, that center T-post is going to help to hold them nice and straight. Okay, so now we're to the point where we're going to put our T-posts in. We are using 8-foot T-posts because they are going to allow us to pound them down into the ground about 1.5 feet, and we will still have about 6.5 feet available to mount the cattle panel trellis to. The taller your trellis is, the better off you're going to be if you're growing indeterminate tomatoes like I am in this row. I'll be putting my Amish paste tomatoes in here, and indeterminate tomatoes just means that these tomatoes will continue to grow and grow and grow taller and taller throughout the season. So I want to give them as much trellis space as possible. So the 8-foot T-posts are really going to be the best way to go. And when we start to mount those cattle panels, we're not going to bring them right down to the base of the soil. You're going to see here that as we bring them in, we're going to actually hold them up, and we're going to mount them about 1.5 feet off of the ground. When the tomato plants are really small, when I plant them, we'll go ahead and put in a few little bamboo stakes here and there for the ones that need it until they can reach the very bottom of that trellis. But by mounting them up about 1.5 feet, I'm allowing myself that extra height that I need when the tomato plants get very, very tall in the later season. I did find the first head of broccoli that was ready to harvest, and it looks as though it is getting pretty hot. So these varieties that I'm trialing this summer may not give me the best production, but we will see. You're gonna see here that we did leave an opening in the center of that 70-foot row, and that is because when you are harvesting and doing things, it is a pain to have to walk all the way down to the end and all the way around. So this year we left an opening there to make it easier to get through the garden. Now that the trellises are all in, I'm gonna start by digging holes for my tomatoes. Because these tomatoes have been up-potted into very large pots, I need a big hole for them to go into. I like to plant them as deep as possible, so I'm using a big shovel here, and I'm going to just dig out one side of this 70-foot row. That way I can just amend each hole and plant each tomato, and it will go quicker than if I did this individually for each tomato. Okay guys, so I'm back. So what you didn't see in that first day was that we actually realized that we didn't have enough T-posts. So I made the mistake of sending Nate to the neighboring town to get 8-foot T-posts. Our local Tractor Supply only carries the 6 and 7 foot, and we really like the 8-footers. So he went there, and it took him about, I don't know, I want to say about 3 hours. He said it was really difficult to find goat minerals, and that's what took him so long. But then I found out that he actually took Dominic out for lunch. So that is actually what took them so long. So I'm back today, and I've got everything prepped. I've got my row prepped. I've got my holes on one side. So I'm simply just gonna plant my Amish paste tomatoes. That's what I'm hoping to get in most of this row here. I have 100 of these guys of this particular variety, and then I have other varieties up at the house that I'll need to plant in another row. So this is just one of our rows this year. So I'm going to start by adding some Epsom salt into each hole. Epsom salt is a great source of magnesium, which is a micronutrient that's super important for the absorption of other nutrients as well as for chlorophyll production. I'm also going to add in some Tums or calcium tablets into the holes. Calcium's very important for eliminating blossom end rot in some of your tomatoes. And then I'm going to go with my standard blood meal, which is for nitrogen. I really want my plants to start growing really strong, big stalks and really nice green leaves. And then I'm also going to add some phosphorus to each hole, and that's for really good root development, so my plants have the ability to take up the nutrients and the water that they need. And then finally, I'm going to try a trick this year that I've heard a lot of places, a lot of people do, which is adding an egg to the hole and then breaking that open in there and then planting the tomato. We will see if that makes a difference this year. Here is one of my tomatoes that I up potted. I started all of these in soil blocks, and then I had to move them up to a 5-inch pot, and you can just see how nice those roots are. They're not root bound, but they've had the opportunity to develop a really good root system before I put these guys in the ground. And they've also been hardened off, which just means that they have been outside in the sun and have gotten used to that full sun, because that's a lot different than your grow lights inside. So it's really important that you transition these guys slowly, because you don't want to get them down into the garden in the hot sun and then have that sun scald them, or it just might be detrimental to them. So make sure that you harden them off really well. When I take my plants out of the pots, I am removing the bottom few leaves from them. I like to really prune my tomatoes up really well so that I don't have any leaves hitting the dirt. And because I am planting them very deep, I want to remove those leaves off of that main stalk, and the stalk will have the ability to produce roots off of that if it's surrounded by dirt there. So as the season goes on, I will continue to prune up my tomatoes. I would say I probably take up the bottom 2 feet of the plant and I remove all of the leaves from there. That helps with any splashback from rains that you might have getting on those lower leaves and causing disease. And then I will also make sure to prune suckers off of these guys. And what a sucker is when you have your main stem and then you have your leaf growing off of it, and then you're going to see something kind of growing up between that stem and the leaf at a 45-degree angle. Those are suckers, and they are going to essentially produce an entire new stalk of your tomato, and it's going to take a lot of energy away from the main stalk. So you always want to make sure to prune your suckers off. Once the plants on the first side were finished, I just started by digging holes on this second side, and I'm just going to repeat the process over again and amend these holes and then plant those tomatoes. As you're watching me plant these tomatoes, you're going to notice that we have 2 sets of T-posts and 2 sets of cattle panels here, and you might be thinking that that is a bit of a waste to actually have that space there and using double the materials to trellis these guys. But in the South, we get so hot and humid that I wanted to have space between these tomato plants on the left side and on the right side so that it will help to reduce any disease and fungal issues. The more airflow I can give, the longer my plants are going to stay disease-free and the better they're going to produce for me. If I didn't take this step, I run the risk of cutting my tomato harvest season short, because once these plants start to get diseased, there's really no saving them. There's no amount of spray. There's nothing really that I can do from that point on to prolong these guys. So I want to take this step up front and use a little extra materials here so that I can ensure that we get a harvest. And to finish up, once everything is planted, we will just take the irrigation drip lines and place those back where they need to be so that the base of each plant is getting watered. Okay guys, so that is it for today. I ended up getting 78 Amish paste tomatoes in this one 70-foot row in the in-ground garden here. We did stagger them to get the maximum spacing so that we could get as many plants as possible in here, because I still have a ton more tomato plants up at my house, probably another 80 or 90 plants. So I will be doing another row of these. But if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave those below. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a great rest of your day.